Hi, my name is Martin Perhiniak. I'm a graphic designer and an Adobe expert and instructor. In this tutorial, I will show you how to create an artistic portrait from a simple photograph. You see on the left the original photograph, what I'm going to use for this tutorial, and on the right you see the end result. We are going to learn lots of techniques during this tutorial, and I hope you will find them useful. I show you quickly what we are going to learn. So this is the final result, and with the layer comps panel I show you the other stages. So this is the original photograph. First we are going to mask out the useful part of the image. Then we will create the background. We are going to use a vector illustration for the floral motifs in the background and a photo filter adjustment layer for coloring it. After that we are going to soften the skin with the new mixer brush tool, what is a new feature in CS5. Then we are going to refine the edges around the hair. Then we are going to change the tones on the face. And finally, we will add a reflection on the table. So, let's get started by duplicating this layer and putting everything else into a group. I just turn this off and I right-click on the mask and delete the layer mask. So this is the original image. I can even name this layer original. First I will need to make a selection and turn that selection into a mask. It's always good to save your selections in a channel, or even better to save it as a layer mask. This is the non-destructive way to hide parts of your layers. So in this case I will use my quick selection tool. Mainly I work with this tool when I start creating a selection because this is the fastest way to do it. You see, I just simply draw over the parts that I would like to use, and I use a large brush size, but you can always change the brush size by pressing down the Ctrl and Alt key on Mac together and then left click and drag your mouse to the right or to the left to change the brush size. The same keyboard shortcut works for changing the hardness of the brush. If you drag it up and down your mouse while you are holding down Ctrl Alt, again on the Mac, then you can change the softness or hardness of your brush. This works for all the drawing tools in Photoshop. So I just make my brush smaller a bit, this quick selection tool brush, and I draw over this hand. As you can see, there are some parts now selected what I don't want to have in my selection. So I press and hold the Alt key or Option key and I draw over these parts. This is removing from the selection. And I just simply add these parts as well. And I will refine my selection after I created the mask. Maybe this part. The quick selection tool is not for refining your selections. It's just for a quick and rough selection. So my rule of thumb is that I never spend more than half a minute with the quick selection tool when I start creating a selection. Then I go to the masks panel and I click on the Add Pixel Mask button. This will turn my selection into a pixel mask. You can alt-click on the mask thumbnail to see the mask itself. This is the mask preview. Here you can draw with black and white to show or hide parts of your image. White shows, black hides. That's the main thing about using masks. I alt-click again on the thumbnail to go back to the normal view and I zoom closer. By the way, this is also a new keyboard shortcut in CS5. If you press and hold the Command and Space together, or the Control Space on PC, and then click and drag right and left, you can zoom easily in and out. Dragging left zooms out, dragging right zooms in. So I zoomed in closer to this image and I would like to get rid of this part. So I select my brush tool, which is B from the keyboard shortcut. I make my brush smaller and I will draw with my foreground color, which is black. And as we know, black will hide. I just make sure that the opacity of the brush is set to 100. Okay, so with 100 I can completely get rid of these parts from my layer. And as you can see, using a layer mask gives me the possibility to make minor changes or very small adjustments to the mask easily and quickly. And I can always refine these edges, because if I make a mistake, something like this, then I only need to switch to white, select white as foreground color. From keyboard it's X, and with that, if I draw over the part, I can redraw that part. This is why masking is non-destructive. You can always go back and forth. So for example here, I can also refine the edges by drawing over them with white and black. I see also a problem here. I just use black and again I just refine the edges. I use a vacuum tablet and Intuos 4 that helps me to work and draw more efficiently and faster than with a mouse. All these techniques that I show you are available with a mouse, but it's always better to have a tablet. You can quickly refine the edges with the mask edge function, but we don't need to use it yet. I just wanted to show you how you can refine the edge of your selection in a mask with the brush tool. I will come back to the edges later, but now I would like to create the background. First I will create a new background. By Control or Command click on the new layer icon, I can create a layer directly below the original layer. Then I would like to fill this layer with completely black, so I will press D from the keyboard to switch back to the default colors, and then Alt or Option backspace to fill that layer with black. Alt backspace fills the layer or the selection with the foreground color. Control or Command backspace fills with the background color. And Shift backspace gives you the fill options, where you can choose, for example, 50% gray. And you also find the new content aware option, which is also a new feature of CS5. I would like to add the gradient for this layer, so I double click on the layer to get the layer style dialog box, and I will choose gradient overlay. I will use the default option, so I will just simply click on OK to accept this. Then I will create another layer, so I will create a new layer, and on this layer I will use my rectangular marquee tool to make a selection. I select this part of the image and I fill this part with black again on this new layer. This will be the table, and I would like to add a gradient onto this layer as well. I can use the effect from the other layer by just simply clicking on this FX icon and holding down the Alt key or Option key on the keyboard and dragging it to the other layer, like this. I would like to reverse it though, the gradient, so I double click on Gradient Overlay on this layer and I select the Gradient Overlay option and I click on Reverse. And I also reduce the opacity of this gradient to make something like this. In Photoshop CS5 it's also a great new feature that you can save your settings in the Layer Styles panel by clicking on this Make Default option. Okay, so I accept this gradient as well. And now I will use the floral motif in the background. I have it on a separate layer and I just simply drag and drop this layer from the original composition on top of these two layers, or maybe just this one because I just want to see it in the background. The layer itself looks like this, and its blend mode is set to soft light. If I set it back to normal, it looks like this. I like this blending, the soft light, so I set it back to that one. Then I turn back my two other layers, and I just want to have less gradient on the background, so I change the opacity of that gradient as well. Something like this.